It's time for Animal Outlook's Vegan Family Podcast.
Hosted by myself, Cheryl Leahy, and Eric C. Lindstrom, two vegan parents raising vegan kids.
That we are. And we're hoping this podcast helps new and seasoned vegans navigate the challenges of their vegan family lives and will point them in the right direction for more information and resources to go to stay vegan.
And we've got some fun. We have guests, kid quotes, very cute things, giveaways, music, and a lot more.
Yeah, so much more. That's right. And I'm so excited about what we're doing here and hope our audience will reach out with their ideas for future episodes. And with that, we'll be right back.
Visit tryveg.com for inspiring and simple plant-based recipes your whole family will love. While there, download our free vegan starter guide. Tryveg.com. We've got vegans covered.
And we're back. So,
yay!
So let's just start this out by what we are doing here. Who are we?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
Yep.
So, I live on the West Coast in the Los Angeles area, and I have two little kids, but I also work for Compassion Over Killing, and I've worked here for a while doing the legal work here. And, you as an East Coast family and as a longtime vegan, I think maybe have some similar overlaps, but you actually were motivated to enough about this topic to write a whole book on it.
Yes. I mean, how lucky am I that, a book, The Skeptical Vegan, came out just about 2 years ago, and it was based on my blog. And then out of that came The Smart Parent's Guide to Raising Vegan Kids, which, as you say, and we'll talk a lot about in this podcast, talks about my own vegan kids, raising our kids vegan from birth, but it also introduces the reader to a lot of other vegan parents. And so that's a lot of what we want to do with this podcast, Cheryl, is be able to invite people who have raised their kids vegan from the get-go, or who have convinced their kids to go vegan with them, or vice versa. The child has convinced the parent. I think we're going to hopefully touch on all of those subjects and really talk about the whole family experience, about being a vegan family.
Yeah, and I think I've seen some resources sort of aimed at children, which is great. A little bit aimed at, how do you plan meals for your family.
Yeah.
I think there really needs to be more talking about the culture of vegan families. We exist, we're here. And
normalize it.
Yeah, and at least in like the activist world, I think, it's not as common to see vegan families, but I think that's really changing. And especially in the last few years, I'm certainly seeing way more vegan families and vegan kids, and just people interested in going vegan or kind of starting just to try it out for their families, for health reasons, for ethical reasons, for both, for environmental reasons. So
whatever reason.
Yeah, and I think that what I really like is seeing people go vegan for one reason and then really getting into other reasons.
I know. It's the trifecta. It's you go in for one reason and you come out with all three. So what was the reason for your going vegan, and what does your family, vegan family, look like?
It's funny because I would have said a few years ago, it's 100% for the animals, right? Like I went vegetarian when I was in grade school, totally because of a PETA brochure that a friend of mine sort of brought into the lunchroom surreptitiously, and we used to feel really sneaky reading it. And then I remember telling our 8th grade teacher about what was in a hot dog and used some very kind of snarky PETA thing about what was in a hot dog. And, we were like, this is disgusting. Look at this. Ha ha ha. And he was like, if you want to put that up on the bulletin board, you can. And I was like, awesome. I felt really empowered and kind of subversive. And then, fast forward to as an adult, I did environmental studies in undergrad and was always an animal person, but thought that was a good overlapping topic, and that kind of led me into the factory farming side. So then when I went to law school, there wasn't a lot in the animal law world. Animal law is still, you know, sort of, it's really changed a lot since I graduated law school. There's been a lot more growth in the field, but I think it's still kind of a relatively small field, and it's really growing. So really it's been about the animals, the ethics, environment. And then when I decided I wanted to have kids, I started to learn a lot more about health.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we as a family started to learn more about health, and my husband got so into the health issue. And now I'm much more aware of the whole community that comes to veganism through health and all the ways that they think about that. So I think that's really interesting in terms of the different approaches, different cultures maybe that come to it, and how do you actually make that work on a day-to-day basis. You know, some of the concerns about, you know, our kids gonna really be able to make it work and be vegan and be healthy and all of that.
Yeah, I know. And that's, again, what this podcast is about. It's our shared experiences and individual experiences, but it's also who else can we learn from? Because I even, I don't know, 2 months ago had a completely different story to tell about our 5-year-old who at the time was still in daycare. And at daycare, we had fantastic support. We actually advocated to the corporate office of the daycare operation, went right to the headquarters to say that our kids and other kids need plant-based milks. We were helping out the lactose intolerant kids while we were also helping out our vegan kids. And we need vegan snacks. And they immediately did it. And so for 5 years of Cooper's life, he was pretty well handled and handheld in terms of the food options and what we knew he was eating. And then suddenly he's in public school as of very recently. And so we're already seeing the challenges that, again, 2 months ago, I hadn't even thought about yet.
That's so interesting. And this is where my lawyer side comes in too, because I'm like, well, there are reasons for this, and we can fix this problem.
Well, some of it is his choice too. I mean, it's cool even for a 5-year-old right now to stand in line at the cafeteria and have your tray and put it up on the conveyor belt or whatever, and ask for that, and that, and point to these foods, and the person will put it on the plate, and then Cooper will presumably eat it or pick around it or whatever he does. But we're not there to watch him, and it's not the same setting as, you know, sort of really nice daycare. It's a public school, and so the kid eats what he eats. He throws out what he doesn't eat. We have no idea what he's doing.
That's so interesting. So, yeah, we're not doing public school until next year, but this is giving me flashbacks to my public school childhood. And actually, it was really hard. That same friend who brought the PETA magazine to school, that kind of got me on, like, sort of sparked my whole journey. She had a really hard time getting vegetarian options even at school. They had to go through this whole process of, you know, her parents had to say it was okay, and then their vegetarian option was like basically a cookie, like a peanut butter and jelly cookie sandwich, which was weird. It was definitely a weird thing back in the, you know, 90s in public schools in Chicago. And I think that probably is changing. I mean, at least in Southern California, it is definitely not weird to be vegan.
Yeah, and again, it's as someone who now is part of the struggle, because Cooper could come home and say, "Oh, I had a bagel today," and you think, "Okay, well, that's probably vegan." And the next day, I had pizza, and I'm thinking, "Oh no, that's not vegan."
So what does he think about it? Like, how does he think about it?
Well, we know that he knows, and that all of his friends know that he's vegan. Again, it's one of those things, and I talk about this too in my book, that at one point it may have been sort of an oddity that the odd person out was vegan, and now the kids that are vegan are the cool kids. All of his friends think that it's so cool that Cooper is vegan. And so if someone asks him, he'll say, "Yes, I'm vegan, and this is what I eat at home, and this is the pizza that I eat at home, and these are the burgers that I eat at home." And they do really well in that regard, that they know that they're not going to eat dairy, eggs, or meat. But when he comes home and talks about something he ate, I kind of cringe I don't want to know, kind of. I'm thinking to myself, well, was it the vegan version of that? Do they have vegan versions of that particular food? I know they have vegan options. And so I'll ask him, maybe what you're eating isn't vegan. Was it dairy cheese? Tell me more about what you ate. Let's talk about it. It's just it's a transition for us right now to just make him understand better, perhaps, what the menu options are. He's not chugging gallons of milk. I know that for sure. He's not, eating 5 or 6 slices of cheesy pizza. But if he's got a choice between 2 different tacos and one happens to be bean and one happens to be whatever other offering they have, I'm not sure how filtered he is in his choices.
If he asks them, "Is this vegan?" will they tell him?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay.
There's a lot of support. We're lucky there. I mean, we live in again a very progressive city, and the school district that he's in, the elementary school, is fantastic. And we can look at the menu and we can see the vegan options that are available. So we're lucky there. But is he empowered enough to stand up on that line and say, "I will take the vegan version," or "I want the vegan taco today"? I'm not sure yet. We're talking about it.
Yeah, what does he say when you talk about it? That's so interesting.
He'll tell us that it was the vegan. I mean, he's trying hard to appease his parents, and he knows, actually, tell you the truth, that I'm sure your kids experience this too. If they do inadvertently or sometimes on purpose eat something that contains dairy, they'll get a stomach ache. I mean, there's things that they're no longer tolerant of in their diet. And so if for a particular night he comes home and he doesn't feel great, we're like, well, what'd you eat for lunch? Just let's think about what you're doing. Trying to keep him on track, trying to keep him reminded of, why we're vegan. He knows that, and you know that. I mean, we've got sound clips that we're going to be playing through this podcast of our kids talking about why they're vegan and what's so great about being vegan. And if anyone wants to send us sound clips, we'd love to put them into the show. These are these are kids who know what they want. These are kids who are pretty steadfast and knowledgeable about veganism and about their diet and why they're doing it, and that they love animals. I mean, that's the basis, I think, of so much of the rationale, like you were in school, of why you would go vegan as a young person.
Yeah. And this is the part, I mean, okay, if I have a bias here, number one, it's to cute kid quotes. It's the best thing in the world. I will definitely overdo the cute kid quotes.
It's time for another cute kid quote.
Mom, I said, I am super vegan, and I save animals, and I find I did better, and somebody say, what's you, and somebody say, what's that about time? A bird? No, it is super vegan, and who that? And who I land, and what's your real name? Ronan.
Who's going to ask you that?
Me?
Who's going to ask you what's your real name?
Super vegan.
And also, close second is, how do kids think? How do they learn? Yeah. What are they really processing, and what does it mean to them? How is it like part of their world? And, as parents, we have the job to kind of allow that critical thinking and foster that critical thinking and the creativity. And also, to give them the information that will allow them to sort of develop these values. So it's kind of an interesting difference between that and activism, where I think as an adult, and you're talking to other adults, like my inclination is just to be like, I'm making this case. Like, this is the argument. Yeah. Here's the information that you need. Like, you're a fully formed human being. You have agency. You need to sort of come to this and ask yourself honestly whether this is in alignment with your values. Where with kids, they're developing their values. So I love to understand, the sort of development of ethics and the motivations that kids have. So, hearing some new environmental factor like you're going to a new school and how the kids really think through that is so interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's part of what, again, we want to do on this podcast is talk about each of these milestones in going vegan.
Yeah, and I mean, I also think, different kids are going to be so different. I would love to hear from other families and hear from other stages, because, your kids are preschool and kindergarten age. My kids are preschool and kindergarten age. This is going to be so different even as 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, right? And it's going to be different as kids going off to college, So I think getting a sense of what are the stages, what are the different personality things that impact that? Like, I listened to you talking about Cooper, and then I think about my older one, and he really, really sort of takes on this vegan identity, really loves it. Yeah. And he's the kid, like, we were at a birthday party over the weekend that was at Chuck E. Cheese, which, all they had that they did have a vegetable tray, which was hilarious, because I'm like, okay, my kids have just had like Sprite or whatever and carrots and broccoli, like that's what they and they were totally fine with it. Like, they didn't even they did both ask me if the cake was vegan, and I said no. And then the pizza, which I had like cheese pizza and pepperoni pizza out there, which I'm like sitting there like smelling it, being like, oh my God. But which of course I'm not saying anything, because I have to put on my like good vegan ambassador hat, But I'm like, I'm getting this like, this is so gross that we do this, and so just horrible that we do this.
I know.
But the kids were like absolutely like didn't even say a word. They knew it wasn't vegan pizza. Yeah. Like they were totally fine. Like, it didn't even, especially like the older one, because he's takes it on himself, especially as the older sibling too. Like, he takes it on himself to kind of police that and, be the leader and kind of take care of things. Yeah. So I think it depends so much on why people come to this, and what's like just the personality that's just like baked into your kid, right? They just come out with their certain personalities, and how does that interact with this topic? I think that's so interesting.
Yeah. I had this opportunity to witness it firsthand not too long ago at a play date where Cooper and Paisley, our 2 vegan kids, were going over to the house of 3 other kids, 3 omnivore kids. And we brought our own vegan chicken nuggets. And so they look exactly the same as chicken nuggets. They taste, I think, great. I'm not sure what brand, but they were, delicious and dipped in vegan ranch dressing or ketchup. It doesn't really make all that big of a difference. But, Cooper and Paisley had their nuggets, and the parent of the 3 kids bought chicken nuggets with actual chicken, I think because she didn't want to eat our food, which of course she's more than welcome to. Her kids are more than welcome to. But I think it was, it felt a little bit like, well, our kids eat meat, your kids don't. So we have our own nuggets that we'll eat. And so they all sat down. It's all like 5 of identical plates with 5, servings of identical food. And Cooper looked over at his friend's plate and said, what's yours taste like? And Mark, his friend took a bite and showed Cooper the inside of it. And then Cooper said, oh, you're eating a dead animal. And said it out loud enough that like the kids started roaring laughter, like I don't think really fully understanding the truth behind it. The parents weren't mortified, but the father basically said, well, there's different opinions at this table. Or not opinions, but basically like, there's varying levels of understanding at this table, kind of thing. And so that's one of those, settings where we were able to manage it. If that same thing happened in a school cafeteria, of course, if it were available, that would be great. But, how do kids deal with those things at as you were saying, different ages?
Yeah, I love that sort of the window into the thinking of different sort of parenting philosophies there too, because the dad saying, there's different levels of understanding. Like, I certainly am a person who will just give the information. Like, I have absolutely, and it's funny because, I know from the research that I've done that kids process death differently, and they don't really understand the permanence of death at these early stages. But I really do think, they are grappling with that. Like, they get that it's a big deal. They get that, and so that's why like my younger one's obsessed with, you know, superheroes and Transformers, and he's always just battling, like, you know, he just sets up lines of battles and then he runs the whole script between the two, and, you know, it's like good guys and bad guys and all that. And that's like kind of their way of thinking about morality. And, you know, I will really be clear, like, this is what happens. Like, you know, we went through the whole thing about the baby calves being taken from the moms, and the milk is supposed to be for the baby calves and all that kind of thing, and people killing animals. And I love the questions that come out of it, and I know they're really processing and thinking it. I'll tell you a hilarious story about my 3-year-old's understanding of death. We were in a pool on vacation, and this was like over the weekend, and we were talking about what your favorite animal is that lives in the water, and he said a shark. And I'm like, a great white shark? So it's like back and forth kind of escalating conversation, like, great white shark? Well, if a great white shark was in this pool, he'd take up like the whole pool. And he's like, yeah. And then he would eat me. And I'm like, yeah. And then you would be dead. And he's like, yeah, he would take me apart, just eat me. And I'm like, yeah. And then you'd be gone. He's like, yeah, he couldn't come back because we're not made of Legos.
Oh my God.
Like, yeah, you couldn't put them back together because they're not made of Legos. Like, yeah, he gets it in his way, right? Like, it's just, that was probably, I said I love cute kid quotes, and that's something that just, like, got me going for, like, days. I just kept thinking about that. Like, this is, like, just sustaining me for days.
We got to make sure that we cut away to as many of those as possible. Clips of our kids, clips that could be sent in to us would be fantastic. If anyone has anything they want to send us, email veganfamily@triveg.com. Anything that we can put into this podcast to remind people of, you know, the sort of kids say the darndest thing, the innocence of kids. As you were talking too, Cheryl, I mean, you talk about all of the perspectives that kids have on these things and different ways in which they process them, different levels of actually understanding. I can honestly say that my two kids that are, you know, 5 and 4 right now, understand completely why they're vegan. They understand that animals are not food, that animals are friends. They're not just repeating it, they mean it. They completely understand that cow's milk is meant for baby cows. There's no question in my mind. And so in given any opportunities to explore this, to share this, to make this as part of their personality, part of their identity, they want to do that. And so for us and for the group we work for Compassion Over Killing, for the triveg.com website and all of the resources that are available there too, that's what this comes down to, is that we're in this this movement that's really taking off, that's got some traction, that's creating more opportunities to normalize the vegan diet, because of course diet's one aspect of it. By making delicious foods more available and more vegan, you know, more vegan options, we're talking about all of these obstacles and barriers that our kids are facing, that we're facing as parents, that are being chipped away. Things have changed so much in the past 5 or 10 years that we can only look ahead and say, boy, the next 5 or 10 years are going to be fantastic for vegans.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it really, for me, has been amazing to see what a lens for ethical reasoning veganism is. And I mean, I certainly have the philosophy that you just tell the kids the truth, right? Just about things in general.
Yeah, right.
And I do think watching, like, sort of opening the conversation more to really process through that I have seen them using the kind of thinking that they have learned and that they've kind of organically developed to apply this to other kind of big topics.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what is actually pretty empowering. You know, I think from the outside, a lot of non-vegans look at the concept of veganism and see it as deprivation. And what's so funny, because, you know, we do this in a regular sort of non-kid oriented activism. We have to correct people and say, no, actually, you know, look at the research. Vegans are happy. We love being vegan. And and I think for the kids, there's this sort of added benefit of feeling like they are empowered and they have some control over it. And there's, like I said, different personalities come to it in different ways and hook into it a little bit differently. And I think that's I remember that just being a kid and feeling like you didn't have control over anything, right? I mean, that's part of the difficulty of being a kid. The world is so designed to sort of keep you safe and be 10 steps ahead of you.
Unless I have a fit, I'm not going to.
Right, and so that's all they have left is a fit to like deal with that, right? Yeah. But I think this allows them to really think more abstractly, more globally, and more ethically. And I think that's been really fun for me to watch them sort of think through this stuff and to kind of apply that kind of thinking to other topics too.
That's such a fantastic way to wrap up this episode too. You know, we're talking about we're going to have more giveaways. We're going to have tips and advice and special guests, kids quotes, and you know we'll be able to answer questions that are sent to us. But I think you hit the nail on the head, hammer on the nail head, or whatever the saying is. That we tell our kids the truth, and that's something that all parents want to aspire to, and that's something that we're telling our kids to always tell the truth themselves. And so as vegan parents, we're actually allowing ourselves to do that. We're allowing ourselves to tell our kids exactly what the truth is about, you know, the meat, dairy, and egg industries.
Yeah, my confidence as a parent, and I hope other parents sort of get similar confidence when they do this with their kids has increased because, you know, I get such great feedback on it. One thing that we've done as at COK generally is we worked to pull some social science research on messaging and persuasion. And one lesson that we got out of that is that you can have things that have negative emotional impact when you're talking with people about their values or trying to persuade them or change their behavior or their attitudes. But you just have to pair it with what's called self-efficacy information. Right. Yeah. So I think there's a certain level of insecurity that people have generally, especially maybe when they're thinking about having kids or they're not sure how they're going to raise their kids on this topic. Because they're like, well, I don't want to say something traumatic or scare someone. Yeah. But really, I mean, my experience has been kids are thinking about these big topics anyway, right? Like we have these things sort of baked into our psychology. We love superhero movies. We love myths, and you know the Disney movies are all pulled from these old stories. Sharks and swimming pools are you know a great topic to really like engage a 3-year-old, obviously. So I mean, so they think about this. Kids have big fears and big you know happy emotions too, and it's not that we're just going to sort of give them the weight of the world and that's going to be the end of it. We're giving them something that even though it's negative, it's paired with here's how you can fix the problem. And everything I've seen has been really positive in terms of the way they respond to that because they really do take that on and feel like they now have power and they know how to fix the problems and you know they know how to talk to people about it and they don't have the self-consciousness that maybe you know people who come to it as adults might have.
Yeah, right. Really, really beautifully put, well said, and I hope that this podcast can bring that to people. I hope that this is the kind of thing that they listen to on a regular basis, that they share with their friends, and we can really help at any level, whether or not you have 1 kid or 2 kids or even no kids. If your family is you and your partner and some fur babies, that's great too. Just being able to provide as much guidance, I think, for people to go and stay.
And I'm looking forward to learning things from people who are listening too.
Yeah,
you know, because like you know, and this is the beginning of the journey, and I think it would be really fun to get sort of family culture tips. You know, like we can really make really make the vegan family culture a thing, right?
Yeah, I love it.
And sort of celebrate the different ways that people approach the issue and different stages that people are at, both in their veganism journey and in their journey as parents and as kids. Yep. And sort of see how kids come at this issue too. So I'm excited.
Let's all learn from each other.
Thank you for tuning in to Animal Outlook's Vegan Family Podcast. Have episode ideas or questions about going vegan? Email us at govegan@triveg.com.